Hello, welcome, namaste, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for those of you joining me in the room. And thank you for those of you joining me on Zoom. And thank you to those of you listening to the recording afterward. My name is Zach Beach, and this is a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart. All about this 18-inch journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes simply to travel from the head to the heart space. I like to begin with a poem of my own as a lead-in to this week's teachings. We'll close with a short meditation and then have some time at the end for question and answer. And today's poem is a very short one from my collection of short poems called Pebbles. And this pebble goes, we all need support. We don't need fixing. Practice compassion with tears in your eyes. I'd like to talk today about compassion, about what it is, where it comes from, and how to cultivate it. As a writer, I love words. I love learning the deeper meaning behind many of the common words that we use. And also going deep into the etymology of words. I find we can extract new meaning by learning about how a word developed. For example, take the word companion. Any Spanish speaker knows that we use the word con to mean with, right? I'm thinking about like arroz con queso, right? Rice with cheese. So we also know that pan means bread. So what is a companion? It is somebody that you would break bread with. So we have something similar with compassion. We have that same kun at the beginning, which means with. And pati means to suffer or endure. So compassion comes from compati, which literally means to suffer with. This points to the fundamental truth of compassion, that it is a shared experience. It is not something that you can do or practice from afar, from a distance. You have to get close. Henry Nguyen put it this way: compassion asks us to go where it hurts, to enter into the places of pain, to share in brokenness, fear, confusion, and anguish. Compassion challenges us to cry out with those in misery, to mourn with those who are lonely, to weep with those in tears. Compassion requires us to be weak with the weak, vulnerable with the vulnerable, and powerless with the powerless. Compassion means full immersion in the condition of being human. So compassion has to do with sharing, has to do with being with, has to do with recognizing we're all in this together. And this also applies to ourselves. So when we think about cultivating any capacity that we might offer to other people, we have to begin to recognize it starts with ourselves. Can we be compassionate to ourselves? And what does it mean to be with suffering when applied to ourselves? Well, it means increasing our capacity to be with our own suffering. So this is the practice of self-compassion. So I first heard we should practice compassion with wet eyes or tears in your eyes from mindful self-compassion trainings developed by Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Christopher Germer. And they find that there are three layers or three factors or three levels to self-compassion. And they are mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. Another way to think of this is loving, connected presence. Loving, aka kind, connected, aka recognizing our common humanity, and presence, aka having a mindful attention on this present moment. So, our first task to practicing compassion is simply being with the suffering, having the courage to face the suffering, which is a normal thing we tend to want to avoid. In fact, most of the time, most human beings are spending all of their efforts trying to get what they want and avoid what they do not want. And when we get what we do not want, that is suffering. So it's a normal condition to continuously seek what you want in forms of pleasure and avoid what you don't want in forms of pain. But unfortunately, it doesn't work, as you have probably found in your own life, despite your absolute best efforts and your biggest problem solving, decision making, we still find ourselves in situations that cause pain and suffering. It is inevitable. So, our first task is to stop running from things and to start being present to them, which is why our first task when practicing self compassion is to be present to whatever it is that we're feeling. And it's normal and easy to jump into flight, fright, freeze response when we do enter into stressful situations. We tend to fight what we're feeling by dismissing it, criticizing it, trying to force it away from our experience. We tend to freeze by numbing ourselves, whether it's numbing ourselves with food or alcohol or disassociation. And we tend to flee from the emotion by distracting ourselves. And we distract ourselves in all sorts of ways, not just with our media and our phones and our computers and our televisions, but some people even distract themselves by overworking. We all have our own strategies to avoid pain that needs to be felt and digested in order to grow from it. So this is where the practice of RAIN, RAIN, can come in handy. It's our first task to meeting our pain and holding it with an open heart. The R in RAIN stands for recognize. That's the first step. Let us first just recognize for a moment that we are experiencing some pain, stress, or challenges in our life. Rather than avoid it, rather than stuff it down, rather than pretend it's not happening, we recognize it. And then the A in brain is to allow. So we allow ourselves to feel it. It's easy to think of pain, grief, loss, suffering as a big monster that we have to keep at bay. But they're just feelings. They're just temporary, ephemeral experiences that want to pass through our awareness. And in due time, they will leave our awareness. So we have to allow ourselves to feel it. Then we can investigate it. This is the I in RAIN. And investigate doesn't mean pick a psychodynamic approach to figure out where these emotions are coming from and what your mom or dad said to you a long time ago that created certain patterns and conditioning to create this current thought patterns. It really means investigating where you are experiencing this in this moment. If you do have grief or loss or pain or stress, where is it in your body? How does it manifest in your body? What sensations do you associate with it? And then if we're taking a more compassionate or loving approach to our mindful practice, our RAIN practice, then we can have the N be nurture. Sometimes it means non-attachment, recognize that you are more than your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. But it's nice to add a loving flavor to our practice and have the N be nurture. And this is the fundamental lesson of the Buddha. If you can bring mindful presence to whatever is happening, you wake up out of the trance of small self and into who you are. So we can see our own pain and suffering as a gateway to greater understanding, understanding of ourselves and understanding of others. And after we are present to whatever it is that we are experiencing, then we can tap into the practice of common humanity to recognize that you are not alone in your suffering. Other people have gone through, will go through, and are currently going through exactly what you are experiencing right now. We are all in the same boat. So, this is a practice to shift from this is my pain that I am experiencing and I need to get rid of to this is the pain. This is a pain that is rising in the open field of my awareness. And after we shift from my pain to the pain, then we can shift it to our pain or the pain that we all share in. The pain that we are experiencing is fundamental to the human condition. The Buddha discovered the truth of suffering when he encountered three people, a person who is sick, a person who is dying, and a person who is dead. And that brought him to the realization, him to the awakening, that all humans suffer, that we all deal with the reality of sickness, old age, and death. So, too, we can experience it. If we are experiencing stress, pain, emotional grief, or even boredom, boredom is also its own kind of suffering. We're not the only ones to experience that. We can shift away from why me attitude. In fact, Eckhart Tolle says this is a wonderful transformation to take. This is the first step to awakening when we stop asking ourselves the question, why is this happening to me? Because that implies a certain level of resistance and a certain level of avoidance to actually experiencing what it is that is ours to feel. So we tap into our common humanity. There's a story of a woman who works from home all day in a nice house in the suburbs. One afternoon, she accidentally left her back door open, and a cute dog came into the house and fell asleep on the couch. And the woman saw the dog and thought it looked tired and let it sleep for a while. And after about an hour, the dog got up and left. And sure enough, the same day, or the next day, the dog comes in again, sleeps on the couch for an hour, and leaves. So after a few weeks of this happening, the woman ties a note to the dog's collar and says, I don't mind at all, but I just thought you should know that your dog comes and sleeps for an hour on my couch every day in the afternoon. The next day, the dog comes back with another note on his collar that reads, the dog lives in a house with 3 young kids. He's trying to catch up on his sleep. Can I come with him tomorrow? So it's a lovely story that points to our common humanity. Here is a person who responded to a dog, recognizing, this dog is sleeping, it must be tired. And we can easily extend that to, wow, this dog is in the same condition of everyone else in their households. Both the parents of these young toddlers are also not getting an hour of sleep that they need in the afternoon. So we're all in the same boat together. As this is tapping into our common humanity. And this is why we want to meet our own pain, because it can be a source of empathy and understanding. Once we get in touch with our own pain with a certain experience, we are better able to help others who are going through the same pain. Once we have gone through our own dark night, we can help others through theirs. There's so many inspiring stories about people who experience a certain negative tragedy in their life who go on to heal themselves, transform themselves from it, to help others through the same journey. So there are people who experience domestic violence who then go and help out at shelters and help others break out of their own domestic violence situation. There are many who struggle for years for addiction. They finally become healed. They finally break out of the spell of their addiction, and then they go back and they help people break out of their addiction. So it's a lot easier to empathize and understand what somebody is going through when you yourself have gone through it. So there's a story of an art teacher named Naomi Minkin. She was an artist and teacher to the blind, the deaf, and the elderly. When she first learned that she had been accepted as an art instructor for the blind, she went home and put on a blindfold, not merely for a few hours, but for an entire month. While blindfolded, she tried to create some crafts. She felt textures and shapes that her eyes had not allowed her to see, and she made some surprising discoveries. Everything she tried to create without sight came out larger than it was supposed to be. With the help of her new understanding, she invented ways to compensate for that so that she was able to guide her blind students to be accurate and create as they intended. By temporarily becoming blind, she learned to see as they did. So, a lot of spiritual practice does put us in a sort of temporary state of suffering. And there's many reasons why we might do that. But one of those reasons is it increases our capacity to be compassionate for others who are going through the same thing. So if you practice fasting, for example, whether you're fasting for a day or a week or a month, it puts you in touch with those who are fasting not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. When you feel those deep pangs of hunger in your own belly, it suddenly creates a sense of gratitude that you have chosen this path and that you do have the privilege to eat when you want. And then it puts you in solidarity with those who don't have food on the table every single day. So we offer presence to our pain, and then we connect it to our common humanity, and then we give ourselves the kindness that we seek. And this is one of the lessons of compassion. We're better able to help somebody, including ourselves, when we are able to touch their suffering. So, when we are able to touch our suffering, we are better able to give ourselves what we need in that moment. If we don't touch the suffering, we'll try to push it away. We'll try to numb it. We'll try to disassociate. But once we get in touch with the suffering, we can see what will help to nourish us in the situation. So one female comedian said this: "When I go through a challenging breakup, I like to buy a new dress to make me feel better. Sometimes, if I see a dress I really like, I'll dump the guy I'm with just to get it." So this is a totally appropriate coping strategy. When you go through something challenging, recognize that you are experiencing pain and make yourself feel better. This is an important part of self-love, recognizing that you are human, you have emotional needs, and seeking to get those emotional needs met on your own. So we can be kind to ourselves. We can shift from being our own worst critic to our own best friend. There's a story of a man who goes to God in heaven, and the man is quite worried. And God looks at his record and he says, "Nope, nope, that's not a sin. Oh man, that's not a sin either. Oh, you were worried about that? That's not a sin either. Oh my goodness, you must have worried yourself to death." It's easy to criticize and judge ourselves for our behavior that we might not like, but we can be kind to ourselves. We can soften the heart. Tony Hoagland writes in this poem: "Down near the bottom of the crossed out list of things you have to do today, between green thread and broccoli, you find that you have penciled sunlight. Resting on the page, the word is beautiful. It touches you as if you had a friend and sunlight were a present he had sent you from some place distant as this morning, to cheer you up and to remind you that among your duties, pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing." I'll say that again. Among your duties, pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love, and love is no less practical than a coffee grinder or a safe spare tire? Tomorrow, you may be utterly without a clue, but today you get a telegram from the heart in exile proclaiming that the kingdom still exists, the king and queen alive, still speaking to their children. To anyone among them, we can find the time to sit out in the sun and listen. Hmm. I'm also a big fan of to-do lists. And I think we can all pencil in sunlight, nap, rest, read, bubble bath, walk in nature. We can also put that on the to-do list. We can also think that self-love is also part of our duty, also part of our job. Our job of being human involves deepening the love that we have for ourselves. So the fundamental lesson here is that the more we are able to sit with our own pain, the more we can sit with the pain of others. Once we learn to hold our pain with an open, kind heart, without judgment, with no agenda, no desire to fix or change or improve upon the current situation, we are better able to be with others through their own pain without any desire to change or fix them. A recent podcast guest, Crystal DeSantis, told me that there are four different modes of communication. We have listening, joining, problem solving, and debating. And there are probably more modes of conversation, but I think this is a really wonderful first step to recognize there are different modes that we enter into when we are communicating with somebody that we care about. We can listen, we can join them, we can help them problem solve, and we can debate. And one isn't necessarily better than the other. Like a lot of things in life, we need balance. And we really need to balance our desire to quickly resolve someone's problem with holding them exactly where they are at. So we quickly jump into and head straight into problem solving, straight into debating without taking any time to actually listen to the person. And if we don't truly listen to them, how are we even going to know how to solve their problem or how to help them solve their problem? It's not going to work. You have to understand the problem if you're going to solve it. So you have to take the time to pause and really listen to what somebody is going through. And I think we have this experience a lot, right? Maybe one partner turns to the other one and says, you know what? I just hate my job. And the other one replies, oh, it's not that bad. You should feel lucky. There's some positive intention here, right? There's a desire to help. Oh, my partner is feeling bad. Let me cheer them up. They're lamenting their job, so maybe they can shift to gratitude that they have a job. But again, that doesn't hold them where they're at. Maybe your partner says, I hate my job, and you say, well, then quit. Done. Just get rid of that job. It's causing you suffering, so get rid of it. But again, you're not holding them, you're not listening. They probably just want somebody to hear their own suffering because none of us want to be alone in what it is that we're going through. So, in order to go a little bit upstream, to shift more towards listening and joining, we have to, as you guessed, increase our ability to be with suffering. There's a story of a woman who had a brain injury. As a result of the injury, she would sometimes collapse on the floor. Whenever that happened, people around her would rush to get her immediately back on her feet, but before she was ready. When asked about it, she would say, I think that people rush to help me up because they are so uncomfortable seeing an adult lying on the floor. What I really need is someone to get down on the ground with me. Hmm. So we talked about the three components of self-compassion: mindful presence, common humanity, and self-kindness. And we tend to divide compassion for others into four levels. We have the cognitive, emotional, intentional, and motivational levels of compassion. You can also think of this as thinking, feeling, intending, and acting. And I wanted to focus particularly today on the first two, on the heart and the mind, on the thought and the feeling. Because the first step to cultivating compassion for others is to increase our cognitive awareness of their suffering, to put ourselves in their shoes, right? Henry David Thoreau wrote this: could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? And I do really think our capacity to see another person's point of view as a human superpower. Sure, some animals can learn through observation, can recognize that another entity might have information that they themselves do not know. But by far, humans evolutionarily have the greatest capacity for what psychologists call theory of mind, our ability to theorize what another mind is thinking completely separate than our own. So I do think it's a great miracle, as Henry David Thoreau would say. So before you insult somebody, you have to walk 10 miles in their shoes. That way, when you do insult them, you're 10 miles away and you have their shoes. It's a little joke for you. Point is, don't kick a man when he's down. He might get up. Another joke for you. What I'm getting at is I've already talked before about the Four Noble Truths. The first one, we must all recognize that life contains suffering. There is suffering in life. In fact, also in Buddhism, there is the four reminders. And one of those reminders is, again, there is suffering in life. Not only is it a noble truth, but it's a noble thing to remind ourselves of this reality. And we should remind ourselves that there is suffering in life so that we become kind to every person that we meet, because every person that we meet is fighting a number of their own battles. Despite the filters that we put up on Instagram and Facebook demonstrating how perfect and beautiful our life is, if you scratch the surface of anybody's life, underneath you will find stress and suffering. From the rich to the poor, from the well off to the worse off, it is a unique human capacity to find ourselves wishing things were different and to suffer. So, because of that, we can practice compassion to everyone that we meet. So, this is the first step: cognitive awareness. This comes from the mind. I can recognize if you tell me that you just lost a parent, I can recognize that you are suffering. I can read a book about somebody's life and really acknowledge from a mental space that this person suffered in a particular way. And that can also increase my capacity to empathize others who have also gone through similar experiences. So while cognitive awareness is important, it still comes from the mind. And the mind is great at separation. The mind makes the fundamental distinction that you are over here and somebody else is over there, that I am here speaking and you are there listening. This is the duality that the mind creates. So cognitive awareness is the first step, and it's a fairly easy step. I see that you are suffering, but it's the movement of the heart that requires a certain de-armoring in order to truly empathize, in order to truly feel what somebody else is feeling. During a meditation retreat, a woman told the story of her morning commute. And she said that every day she passed by the same homeless person. Feeling bad, she started giving money to this person. Of course, she didn't want to give all her money away, and she knew she'd see him again and again, so she worked out a budget. for this homeless person. She would give him 50 cents a day, 5 days out of the week. That's $2.50 a week, $10 a month. That's something that she could handle. So she had been doing this for a number of weeks. And at the meditation retreat, after a few sessions of internal reflection and attunement, she realized she never actually looked this person in their eyes. And she shared that she didn't look at this person in the eyes because she was afraid. Not afraid that this person would become violent and attack her, but afraid that if she did look deeply into this person's eyes, he would be sleeping at her home on her couch. Right? This is the fear. It's a normal fear. Maybe you have this fear. If you open up your heart too much, you might give yourself away. You might become a rug that people simply walk over. So it's normal to have a certain armoring around the heart. It's normal to not want to shift to this feeling, empathetic piece of compassion because you are going to feel a certain level of pain and discomfort inside yourself. And that's where the courage comes in from the Spanish corazón, meaning from the heart. We have to have courage to go into the places that we're scared to go if we are to live this life from the heart. So remember the two modes of conversation. We have listening and we have joining. Listening, it's easy, it comes from the ears, comes from the mind, comes from your verbal processing centers. It's easy to understand the words that somebody is saying, but we also have to join them. So our next step is emotional, and it's a shared emotion. And this is the fundamental difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is when you're looking at your friend who's deep down in a hole and you're like, wow, it really sucks to be down there in that hole. Empathy is climbing down in the hole with them, looking around and saying, yes, it does suck to be in here. It is hard to be in here. It's a shared emotion. It's a shared experience. There's a story. A mother is hanging out with her friend when her friend notices the mother's child is using a blowtorch to burn the words, I need love, into the wall. Surprised, she says, aren't you going to stop him? To which the mother says, oh, he's only doing that for attention. And I like the multiple meanings to this story because, first of all, this is a person communicating with words, or it's a kid, and kids aren't as good at communicating their feelings through words. They're amazing communicators through behavior. If you ever find your kid acting out, think about what it is they are trying to communicate to you. The point being, at the level of the mind, the mom recognizes that this child is suffering, but her heart isn't moved by his actions. Oh, he's just doing that for attention. And I'm like, intention is the food of love. Love is how we give our attention. Our loving presence is the medium for our empathy and understanding and compassion. Attention is the food of love. So, of course, he's saying, I need love. He needs attention. Attention is the food of love. So, just like the woman looking into the homeless person's eyes, our love is communicated through our presence, through our attention. So this requires an openness and a willingness that isn't easy. Naomi Shihab Nye wrote, the Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have the strength enough to answer. Or by then, you'll be such good friends, you don't care. So join them, right? We invite strangers in for tea. We feed them and have conversation. And at that point, we're friends. The illusion of separation has dissolved and we become companions. When we share bread, And when we share suffering, it grows our compassion. So Pema Chodron put it this way: compassion is not a relationship between the healer and wounded. It's a relationship between equals. So it's so easy, if we're coming from the mind, to live in that realm of duality. I am a helper and I am helping this person. I am a doctor. This is my patient. I am a therapist. This is my client. My job is to help and I am helping this person. It's easy to create that relationship rather than join them. Bring yourself down to the same level. Recognize we're all in this human experience together. Then helping somebody is just like your left hand bandaging your right hand when you get a cut. When you get a cut in the right hand, you immediately rush to help it. Your left hand doesn't say to the right hand, "Oh, you owe me one for that one." It just helps. So too, when we see our common humanity, when we see ourselves and others, we just help them because they are us. It's like our left hand helping the right. And at the same time, we welcome in the uniqueness of human expression. As an example, I am a lefty. My left hand does a lot more things than my right hand. My left hand writes beautiful poetry. My left hand tosses a frisbee to my little nephew. It does such a great job. Does my left hand ever tell my right hand that it needs to pick up the slack? That it's not worthy of being called a hand because it's not fulfilling nearly as many functions? Of course not. It's a relationship between equals. They're both hands. We're all human beings. Hmm. So I talk about this movement of the heart, this de-armoring of the heart. I talk about this movement of kindness and being kind to ourselves. I talk about sitting with pain and how it increases our capacity to understand and be with others, as if it's easy, and it's not. But it is a practice, something we can continuously choose to bring into our life each and every day. So, as we are being kind to ourselves on this path, we can simultaneously embrace exactly where we are as we make conscious and intentional steps forward. We can honor ourselves where we are as we practice to improve. Even if you're a little seed, you haven't even cracked open your shell yet. Just enjoy being the seed that you are. You're only going to be a seed once before you grow into a beautiful, large tree. So enjoy where you are as you grow. And soon you'll be shedding parts of yourself that do not serve. We have so much to learn from trees, from clouds, and from flowers. When a flower blooms and it releases old petals, does it take the petal and toss it aside? No, it just grows new petals and the dead petals naturally fall away. So, as we embark on this path, as we embark on this journey of cultivating kindness, compassion, empathy, and understanding, the dead petals of hatred, judgment, criticism, ill will, they'll naturally fall away. We don't need to push them away. We don't need to judge them away. They will naturally fall away on their own as we welcome in what is blossoming, what is blooming, what is growing inside of us. So Donna Farhi, my favorite yoga teacher, put it this way: any movement toward greater kindness and compassion is to be celebrated. Any skillfulness in staying calm in the heat of the moment, in remaining cheerful in adversity, and in maintaining equanimity in success and failure is to be commended. Any attempt to keep the heart open when we most wish to close down is a movement in the right direction. Hmm. So being in California, I love the redwoods. They grow so high and so tall, and they do it by taking their time, bit by bit, step by step. You look at a tree outside your window, it might not even look like it's growing, but small, consistent effort over a long period of time, and you too can reach the heavens. You too can touch the sky. You too can meet this world in all of its pain and all of its joy with an open and present heart. You can do it. I believe in you, and I hope you believe in you too. So, with that, let's sit, straighten the spine, relax the shoulders, and soften. With an alert, strong back, we create a soft front. Soften the muscles around the eyes, soften the cheeks, soften the jaw, soften the breath, and soften the heart. Soften the tightness, keeping your heart in knots. Unravel the tangled threads of karma, of past conditioning that keeps the heart closed. And bring to mind an area of your life where there is some suffering, not any intense suffering, like a 5 pound weight of suffering, some minor stress in your relationship, in your job, at home. And simply recognize this is a moment of suffering. See it for what it is. No desire to push away or latch on to. This is a moment of suffering. And as we are mindful with our suffering, embracing it, you can shift to common humanity. Suffering is a part of life. This suffering is a part of life. Thinking of other people who are going through similar things, seeing how this suffering is a part of life, letting go of resistance. Finally, tapping into kindness. You might imagine what a good friend might tell you in this situation to cheer you up. And perhaps you can tell yourself those same words. You might take one hand to the heart space, offering kind words to yourself. And if kind words don't quite resonate, you might simply check in. What am I needing right now? Or what can I do for myself right now? Hmm. How can I be kind to myself in this moment? And afterwards, what's something nice I can do for myself? And honoring yourself in this moment for taking these steps, for listening to this talk, for trying out these exercises. Because any movement toward greater kindness and compassion is to be celebrated. Any skillfulness in staying calm in the heat of the moment, in remaining cheerful in adversity, and in maintaining equanimity in success and failure is to be commended. Any attempt to keep the heart open when we most wish to close down is a movement in the right direction. And the heart that is blossoming in me honors the heart that is blossoming in you. Namaste.